hatching, cross hatching. Always thinking through it. And notice here I'm just really just filling up with a quick hatch, which I then cross hatch, because this area is going to be a little darker. There's going to be a little extra detail with that hair, so I could blend. So what I'm doing is I'm layering in order to blend, soften up, and then layer again. So you can do that, but you want to do it as close to where it's going to be as possible, and not just throw pencil lines everywhere that will then maybe show up and kind of hurt the quality, the look of your beautiful horse. It's coming together nice. Okay, let's go into one of the main, again, before I start any blending, and that's kind of what I would do next. I would begin to just now begin to blend some of this graphite. Maybe I would use even a bigger blender like this and really layer it in. You want to be very cautious at this stage. You don't want to overdo it. You don't want to hurt the paper, because right now you're adding friction. You don't want to add too much of it. Remember, layering patiently, it's better. Bringing some of that graphite into this area. Never forgetting about light and how it's working for you. I am going to go now into the eye. So here we're going to begin to think about still dark, light and dark shapes. But I'm also going to really clean up what would seem almost as shapes that are more detailed. They're just sharper. The fact that we see it as an eye kind of slows us down. We need to really stay focused on shapes. Shapes of light, shapes of dark. I'm going to actually develop some graphite in here instead of mapping. I kind of mapped out light, dark, went right into it, but I could really take this step by step and bring in my blender, because that eye really kind of gets glossy. I could always bring back just the eraser to pump up a little light in there. Bring in some extra pencil lines. Now there's a nice shift of light dark right within the features of this eye. You begin to add the level. I guess that would be like the darkness of the eyelid as compared to the level of darkness in the actual eye. But all the light that is around it. Here's where you want to be really patient and minimize your lines. You can do really well, excellent detail, without trying to force the detail. You just focus on what are my main, if I could see them, my main shapes, my main lines, and try to just put them down. And you could do this by layering it. Notice that I'm beginning to add just some patterned, shapier lines here and there that are beginning to layer and look a little darker, but begin to give much, much better sense of form to what's happening here, all around here. Especially around this. If you remember from our studies of bone structure, how it all works out right in and around here. right in here, especially in here, and putting it together with nice muscle. So notice that these lines begin to get a little harsh. So I want to soften them up once again. And blend in the direction of the muscle or the bone. How do I do that? Where do I pay attention to? Yep, remember, it's light shadow. So you see how the light, one area is lighter, one area is darker. You're going to want to rub it and kind of diffuse it softer from the darker to the lighter. And that is all about pressure and speed. If you're going too fast, you might not be as much in control as you should be. And if you're going too hard, you lose a little bit of, again, of that niceness, softness, call it tenderness that you should be using. I use the word caressing. You just caress the paper. Think of, I guess, like a cat, how they like to be petted or caressed. That, you could do it really soft where they're really enjoying it. Like, okay, yes, that's, or when we know it's a little too fast or a little too hard, not as enjoyable. Here you want to just pace yourself. And develop muscle and little shapes of light and shadow. So with good patience, it starts coming together. And now we look for more and more things that are going to complicate it. So remember, we said from biggest to smallest, from simplest to more complex. Here's where it begins to get more complex. But our rule is always to keep it simple. Even when it begins to get complex, try to simplify the complex. So here I need to get way closer to my reference. I need to get good eyes on what's happening in these areas. So I'm beginning to add some defining lines here now. Notice how they're streakier. They follow the flow of the hair. And they're coming from back here where it's darker. So I get a sense of how much darker, how much they're flowing. Adding a little extra layer of graphite here so I could come back and blend it. I feel like I need a little extra darkness down here. Didn't really pay much attention to this area, so I want to make a little better reads. Squinting. The form is what's bothering me. But I notice also that the big difference is happening between here and this area with light here. So I'm just adding extra graphite. Rendering it in, knowing I could bring out a little form, a little light. There is a lot of detail, so I'm holding off still. But what I do want, and that is going to have to be with the eraser, a little contrast with the light. So I'm kind of drawing hair, following just streaky eraser marks. as if light was hitting the hair down here. And there's lots of muscle going on right here. This is not, even in light, this is not as light as that area with the mouth. So I want to make good contrast between these two. And the lines get a little darker in this area here. Starts looking like he's smiling. But again, it's all about looking at, is it lighter? Is it darker? Is it just about this shape? There we go. Now I'm a little more satisfied. Now I'm going to go into this area here. Just try to blend it in. That nice softening. I was talking about how we read the muscle. So I'm going to try to capture that curvature of line that somehow kind of gives us a sense of that nice, beautiful muscle structure. Couple pencil marks here and there. Always with good intention too. Work it in layers. Beginning to see some of the edges much clearer, much better. Big contrast here between light and dark of this area. Notice these curved lines here. Very light, but trying to really follow the direction of the muscle. This needs a little more blending. And this mane is going to be really interesting. You could begin to get creative between line and paper blend. How you develop different areas. For example, this mane, I could almost do it with just paper blender. And it gives you that flowy, nice, light feel. Where I can come back and just add more graphite to separate it from and maybe a few extra strokes of that would just give it a little more emphasis. Bring a little extra eraser here now that I have areas that are fully covered. And this one I do want you to see really close. Hopefully you can here on this camera. Where if you have any type of eraser, and ideally having one of these as well would be a good thing. This is called a kneaded eraser. And you could begin to really very nicely and gently pick up and draw. Use it as a tool of drawing, not as a corrective. We make that mistake a lot. We think erasers to pick up mistakes. No, erasers should be used as a tool to enhance your drawing. Yes, of course, you erase marks that shouldn't have been there, But you want to think of it as, look at this. I could actually bring out light, texture, line, and just draw with it. Sometimes a little softer, sometimes a little harsher. But always as a tool to improve what you already have there. And all that we have left now is a signature. I guess I could go a little bit further, begin to go back and forth with lighter, darker pencils. But I should mention I did all of this with a 2B. I did mention I was going to move up and down my different pencils. Didn't really feel the need to at any moment. But let's go ahead and do just one touch up with a 4B. See if I see a drastic change here. And of course, yeah, there are things you can always improve on by using different types of pencil. These lines immediately show up a little bit darker, richer. And because you have to use so much less of it, less pressure, even less lines, you can absolutely improve your drawing a ton. And there we go. A horse.